This story happened in March of 2021 when I was 19 years old. I'm currently 20 now, and a few of my friends and other people close to me know about this incident. However, as a female, I decided to share this story to teach individuals to be careful at night. I've always liked going on walks, especially at night. I know I'm going to be judged for doing that as a female, and when I live in a state where it's a hotspot for women and children to go missing because of human sex trafficking. But I'm not easily scared. That is, until this one night back in March of 2021. I decided to go on a walk at around 8 p.m. I got dressed and grabbed my pocket knife for self-defense, because, well, you just never know. Anyway, I made my way to a park that was right behind my house and began walking. I had my hands in my hoodie pocket at all times, with my knife in my grip. The park wasn't too far of a walking distance from my apartment complex, so I made it around 6 or 7 minutes. It was a school night, so there was a soccer and baseball game going on at the park. I didn't pay much attention to that though. I just wanted some fresh air. By the park, there was a field of grass and trees where people can park their cars, and I noticed this one that was parked by the side, and I had a weird feeling about it. The car was completely turned off, but there was someone in there. I'm not sure if the person in the car and I made eye contact, but I acted like I didn't notice it and kept on walking by. I made it to the end of the sidewalk and I crossed the street to get into the park itself. A little thing y'all should know, I always enter this park towards the far end, since there's not that much traffic and the main entrance is next to a busy road. Plus, that back section of the park was my favorite because of the stray cats, and I would always sit in my spot and do my thinking and be with them. But that's besides the point. At night, since this section of the park isn't near a busy road or anything, there's little to no street lights, so it's dark. There were a couple of street lights, but they're very dim and didn't light up the street that much. I had a gut feeling that I should just turn back since it wasn't worth it walking in a dark park at night. And even though there were people around because of the games going on, I still didn't feel right. I turned back when I saw silhouettes of people in the dark by the park's fitness area, probably just teenagers doing drugs or something, and I thought to myself, okay, I think it's time for me to go back. I walked back in the direction I came from, and I noticed the same car still parked there. Only this time, I don't see anyone in there. I didn't think much of it until I heard someone coming up behind me. Someone was running up behind me, and it came from the direction of that parked car. All I did was turn my head a tiny little bit and saw a man getting super close to me, almost trying to grab me. My fight or flight response then kicked in, and I chose flight, and I then ran as fast as I could from the area. I didn't stop at all until I made it at the other end of the sidewalk. I began to catch my breath, and I thought to myself, what just happened? It all happened so quick that it just didn't feel real. I turned around and I saw that man walking away in the opposite direction. It's really crazy that he tried to grab me like that and do God knows what in front of other people, because like I said, there was a soccer and baseball game going on in 2 different fields. So if he actually did grab me, there would be people to witness everything. I don't know if anyone did actually see what happened, but I just really wanted to go back home. I ran back to my apartment out of breath, and I sat down on my couch. I grabbed my phone and told my friends about what happened. They believed me, since 1, I wouldn't lie about something like this, and 2, like I said before, I live in a state where it's a real hotspot for kidnapping and human trafficking. I never thought something like this could actually happen to me. I then told this guy who I have a thing with, and he was genuinely upset with me for going out at night alone, but he was relieved I was okay. He told me that I shouldn't walk alone at night, and if I do want to walk at night, he would have to go with me. I felt a sense of security when he said that, and I promised him that I wouldn't go out at night around that time again. For those who might be thinking that this story isn't as scary as others, I want to say this. I've heard so many stories of all topics on YouTube, which is why I brought my pocket knife with me just in case anything happened. However, when you hear these types of stories, you wish and pray that this doesn't happen to you. Sometimes we can still get unlucky and almost be a victim of something. Put yourself in my shoes real quick. The moral of the story is always be aware of your surroundings and have someone you really trust to accompany you when you go out, especially at night. Since then, I don't go out for a walk at that time of night unless I'm with someone, but that hasn't happened yet. I do still do walks, but only in broad daylight and until the sun starts to set. Please be safe and be careful. The world is a really scary and dark place.
For a little bit of backstory, I was around 16 years old when this took place, and it's one of the most horrifying incidents that's ever happened. I go to a school with around 1,500 people. This happened during my junior year, and I'm a senior now. I'd like to note that I have trouble making new friends and talking with people when it came to interaction. What I mean by that is that I don't normally talk to people in general, mainly due to the fact that I was a very socially awkward teen. Most of my time at school, I'd be that one girl you'd see walking around alone, minding her own business. I guess you could call me that of an introvert at the time, as I hated crowds and just kept to myself. Anyway, one of my classes, which was 4th period, involved PE, which is a subject I wasn't a fan of. I have very sensitive skin, so whenever I'm outside, I have to put on special sunscreen and a hat to block the sun. Thankfully, my PE teacher understood my situation and just let me walk around and do laps. One day, our teacher had instructed the class to play out in the field and said I could wait out on the bleachers till they were done. I gladly accepted and watched some videos on my phone until then. 30 minutes into the class, and the sun is killing me to the point where I had to sit under a nearby tree. I continue to watch my video when I hear a noise from behind me. I turn around and there's this guy I had never seen before looking at me from behind the fence. Behind the school fence is nothing but overgrown vegetation and the racquetball court that the school never used. He wore torn jeans and a red shirt, and his hair was a mess. The smell of marijuana and alcohol on him hit me like a brick to the point where I had to hold my breath. I had no idea where he came from, and I knew that he wasn't one of the students in the class as there was only 15 of us. With the school being so close to a city that wasn't so great, it wasn't uncommon to see people like this every now and then. I say hi in a nervous tone, and he then tells me that he needs help finding his dog and if I could help him. At this point, he was clearly lying and figured that he was just on something and needed money for food or something. I politely tell him no, declare that I was not stupid and to have a nice day, hoping he'd get the hint to leave me alone. He follows behind, trying to stay as hidden as possible before practically pleading me to help him. I decline a second time and tell him that I couldn't leave school grounds for something like that. He then starts to repeat his phrase to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. I turn around and say no once again, a bit frustrated. And that's when he says something that still terrifies me till this day. "You made the smart choice, kid." He stares at me with a wicked look on his face, only to turn around walking back into the brush. Sticking out of his pocket was a large knife, which made me go back to the bleachers. I didn't tell the teacher as I feared I'd be the one to get into trouble or that my story wouldn't seem believable. I never saw that man again for the rest of the year, and I hope I never do. Those words he said to me still sends a chill down my spine every now and then. I don't know what his intentions were or who he was, but if he had a knife with him, they obviously weren't good.
Now, this happened in my senior year of high school when I was 17 years old, about to turn 18. I'm a 5'3", 90-pound female who, from a very early age, has been lusted over by much older men. So by 17 years old, I had been experiencing it for 6 years now. So by that age, I was already very used to the really creepy gazes that I would randomly receive out in public. But Mr. B, he always gave me more than just a gaze. Though I moved around often and went to very many different schools, Mr. B was the first teacher I had who gave me the creeps on a daily basis. I had a sub or two in the past sneak glances at me, or even one who gave me his number, but I never saw them again. With Mr. B, however, it was a daily thrill of anxiety as I always wondered what was next, and as you'll see, it would eventually progress beyond school. I had Mr. B first period, and as a senior who had chosen it as a science elective, I was definitely relaxed and I enjoyed talking to my friends often throughout class. As I said, it was supposed to be an elective science class, but he would often ramble off the entire class periods into his specific political and religious views, or just play an unrelated war movie as he had talked to me and my group of friends. Imagine walking into a room and facing 12 o'clock and Mr. B facing towards the door, while the rest of the seats are in front of him facing 3 o'clock. The flag was at like 10 o'clock, so when we did the pledge, we had to stand up and turn around. That'll become relevant later. With the way the seats were, I sat almost directly in front of him, slightly to his right at the back of the class. For whatever reason, he would often intervene in my group's conversations, but no one else's. He would comment on our appearances, which we would always share really blatantly weirded out looks at him. My main 2 friends and I were the weird kids, so all 3 of us were all pretty much in black. I had long red hair, light blue contacts, piercings, and often wore super tall heels. He would always compliment me and tell me how much older I looked, and as the awkward person I was, I would kinda just laugh and thank him and keep my eyes down. Soon during the pledge, he would scoot almost 5 feet over towards me that he could genuinely have his entire left side pressed against my right side as we did the pledge. He would often keep glancing at me and smiling at me as he would do it, sometimes leaning on me so much that I would almost topple over. But because of the design of the room, as I explained before, this left the entire class behind us, and with them all completely able to see this going on. It was because of this that I somehow justified it in my mind that maybe it was okay. I mean, if it was really a big deal, he wouldn't be doing it in front of the entire class like that, right? But it would continue to progress. The pledge thing became a daily occurrence, and even though my friends thought it was weird, they really liked Mr. B. I mean, we had virtually no work in that class, so I just kept my thoughts to myself. He began having us do these really super basic posters because he said it needed some assignments to put in, and as we pushed the tables into groups of 4, with everyone leaning over and working on them, he would slide his body against mine, completely pressed against me for way too long, letting his hand linger on my lower back as he passed. Or sometimes while we sat in class watching all the videos, he would tend to pass me and stop behind me, resting his hand on top of my head for a moment and then running his fingers all through my hair, before then returning to his seat. The first time he did that, I actually completely froze and whipped my head around in disbelief. But no one else noticed, and he had this really weird smirk on his face. I had so much other stuff going on with me beyond that class with him that I didn't really think about it that much at first. But then Mr. B began staring me down in the hallway, to the point that my own twin commented on it before I even told her everything that had been happening. It was only when she said that when I told her everything. She agreed that what he was doing wasn't right and that she got bad vibes from him as soon as she saw the way he looked at me. But the looks in the hall or even the touching in class wouldn't have made me post this here, It's when I began seeing him more outside of school that he caught more of my attention. So I worked at a gas station by myself after school right down the road from the high school, and often until close, and I would also be there on the weekends. As I said, I talked to a few of my friends in the class, and I think this is how he found out so much about me. On the very same day that my job got brought up during class, Mr. B showed up at my gas station later that afternoon, filling up his pump. As the bell chimed when he strutted in the gas station, he smiled wickedly at me from over the counter and asked me a ton of questions. How I liked working there, if it was safe, if I got asked out a lot, etc. I frowned at the latter question, and I told him honestly that a lot of creepy men were constantly hitting on me. I unblinkingly stared at him for a moment, trying to get my point across, but he didn't notice. He was full on leaning over the counter with his elbows on the counter looking at me when one of my regulars then walked in. He immediately straightened and he told me he'd see me tomorrow. My regular approached with raised eyebrows in question as I just rolled my eyes as he asked, an admirer? I snorted and replied flatly, no, he's my teacher. To which the guy makes a pained face and wags a finger at me as he says, You be good now. You don't want anyone losing a job for you. Before I can reply something snarky back, he walks out laughing. Mr. B began to frequent the gas station pretty much weekly, and he would stare at me shamelessly with that same smirk every time. He would ask me about college, where I was going, what I wanted to do, pretty normal questions. He would also brag to me about how much he loved playing guitar, and that sometime I should check out his band, and that it seemed like my type of music. And every time he came in, he would look to the left, then to the right, stare down at me, and then dramatically ask, Do you know all the things that could happen to you alone in here? I would assure him that I was safe and that I had a baseball bat and a panic button, to which he'd just shake his head and then say, That wouldn't stop me if I really wanted someone. He would come so frequently that at one point during the weekend, one evening my stepmother was there, unbeknownst to him, and he then came in and said something like, Do you know just how much trouble a girl like you could cause a grown man? And then referencing the song playing on the radio, he added, You make a grown man cry. To which my stepmother stepped out of the back and snapped, excuse me? What does my daughter do to grown men? To which he paled and stumbled over his words, apologizing, and said that she misheard him, and without further explanation, he then left, giving me a look. My stepmother badgered me about it until I explained that he was one of my teachers, and she got a really serious look, then asking, Really, Vic? Your teachers too? To which I quickly said back, I don't know what to tell you. He's the only one who hits on me, and the topic was dropped from there. When Monday came, Mr. B had asked me if that was really my stepmom, to which I then said yes, and he laughed and said out loud enough for the whole class to hear. Not a great first impression, I have to admit. Things just continued to progress throughout the year. Seniors got out close to a month before the rest of the school, so with only a few days left, I was really enjoying the time I had left with my friends in that class, especially since they wouldn't be graduating yet. To get my scholarship, I had to do community service hours, and one thing I did towards earning those hours was being the captain of a Relay for Life team. I didn't make the shirts, but because my shirt had captain with my last name on it, Mr. B began darkly saying, Oh captain, my captain, anytime I passed him, and he'd laugh. I was selling baked goods with my team at a small motorcycle festival in my town. It had monthly car shows and alike that we do this at, so I mean, it's not really as weird as it sounds. Anyway, at my last event, there was Mr. B with a group of 4 other men looking to be around his age. He was holding a beer and was staring at me before I noticed him. They all began blatantly calling out for me, and Mr. B just smirked and watched me. The rest of the day, he and his friends just stared at us, and when my friend and I had to go get change, he and his friends were just staring us down like prey, loudly hooting and laughing. I turned to see them all with eyes trained on us, Mr. B with the same wicked look. On our way back with the change, he ushered me over, but with it getting dark and him being with a group of men that I didn't even know, I just blatantly shook my head no and kept glancing back as I headed back to my stand. I could hear them all laughing so hard at that. It was finally my last day of high school a few days later, so I was really elated to finally be free. I'm going through my shift after my last day of class on autopilot when I then hear the sound of a motorcycle engine. I had been restocking the shelves when I heard it. Now, I had a crush on one of my customers who rode a bike, so I immediately got excited thinking it was him. My face must have dropped dramatically as Mr. B then walked in, only feet away from me. "Jesus, Victoria. Just because I'm not your teacher anymore doesn't mean you should look so sad." I just shake my head embarrassedly, apologizing, hoping someone else will walk into the gas station to diffuse the awkwardness of this conversation. I try to scurry around him to get behind the counter, but he steps in my way and actually reaches towards my face, pulling on my head to try to make eye contact with him. I step backwards, almost falling into the shelving as I do. Mr. B instantly stumbles forward and practically knocks me over, pretending to catch his balance as he grips me and holds me to him. He holds me there for a moment as I push away, trying to get him off. Mr. B is easily almost a foot taller than me, and he then smiles down at me, then saying, "Not so tough without those killer heels on, huh, little girl?" It's when he asks that I can practically see unsurety of what to do next across his face. He pulls me back and studies me, and as cowardly as it sounds, I'm frozen in place, unable to pull away. He moves his hands from my wrist up to my shoulders, and then lightly shaking me and whispering, "Really bad things will happen to a girl like you in a situation like this." And with that, he lightly pushes me back, and I scurry back over to my counter. And after a really long silence of watching me, he laughs and leans over the counter again, and finally orders $1.69 worth of gas onto a pump, even though he's not even pulled up to it. And as I hand him the receipt, he holds onto my hand, not letting go. He then says, "My first name is Ryan. If you ever want to message me on Facebook, we could listen to music and have some fun. And you," he says, looking me up and down, "be safe, Captain Red. You never know what can happen." He laughs again and actually squeezes my hand before walking out and revving up his bike. He looks at me through the glass door and actually has the audacity to blow me a kiss. He never got the gas. I was really afraid that wouldn't be the last of him, but it was. He came off and on during the summer before I left, but I worked the evenings and we were so busy we actually had 2 people working at a time, so he never said anything provocative ever again. Looking back, I really wish I would have said something, but so many people liked him, and as I said before, he would make it seem okay by doing it in front of the class. He only focused his attention on me in that class, and I don't know why. I wasn't even the best looking girl in the class. I haven't been back to that area since I moved for college a few years ago, and I really don't know if I'll ever go back, because I met so many creepy people there. From what I've been told, he never went to that gas station again after I stopped working there. I know this doesn't sound that bad, but when it becomes something that I had to stress about every single day, and then seeing him randomly at work and elsewhere, it becomes unreal. So Mr. B, I really hope you never did that to anyone else. Please keep your hands to yourself, and seriously, I never ever want to see you again.